We're going to talk about two different lessons today, 4.9 and 4.10. They go together pretty well. 4.9 is model division with regrouping, and 4.10 is place the first digit. So let's take a look at model division with regrouping and what that means. Now, in order for us to remember what regrouping is, we need to think about subtraction. Division is just repeated subtraction, and then subtraction is regrouping. So we want to use those strategies for regrouping, and the process of thinking about regrouping very similar to subtraction. So let's take a look at this problem. We have 16 minus 9. Now, as most of you know, the way that we would solve this problem is say, okay, I can't take 9 away from 6, so I have to look at my tens place. And I'm going to borrow from my tens place, and that's going to become a 0, and my 6 is going to become a 16. You know the motions, but you don't really understand what it means. So let's take a look at what it means for. Alright, if we have 16 and we're modeling that with base 10 blocks, we would have 1 10, and then we would have 6 ones. Now, if we want to take 9 away from that, we can look at our ones right here and say, I don't have enough ones in order to take 9 away. So what we have to do is we have to take this tens block right here and change it into 10 ones. Now we know that 1 10 is the same as 10 ones. And that's really what we just did here in yellow, is we took that tens block that was in purple and we changed that out to 10 ones blocks. Now, if we add up all of our ones blocks that we have, we're still going to have 16. But this way, we can now take 9 away. And when we add up what we have left, we would have 7. Now, the same process applies to division. There's going to be certain times where we can't look just at the hundreds place. We're going to have to regroup that hundreds into tens. Or we can't just pull from the tens place. We're going to have to regroup that tens into ones. Let's take a look at what that looks like. Okay, we have a division problem right here. 3 divided into 48. We represented 48 as 10 blocks. And we're going to do 48 divided by 3. Base 10 blocks for 48 would look like this. 4 tens, and then 6, 7, 8. Okay, so we'd have 4 tens blocks and 8 one blocks. Now, what we need to do with this grouping right here that's shown in base 10 blocks is we need to split it into 3 groups. Division splitting our number into equal groups. So we need to take 48 and split it into equal groups. My divisor, which is my 3 is telling us how many groups we're splitting it into. That's what my divisor is telling us. So it's saying we need to split this into 3 groups. So I'm going to cross one out, and I'm going to write it down here so we can split it into 3 separate groups. So I'm going to have 1, 2, 3. Now I started out my 3 groups, and I notice that I have one of these 10 blocks left. Now, I can't take that 10 block right there and give it to either one of those groups because then they'd have more than the other. So what I have to do with this 10 block is I have to regroup and change it to ones. Now, like we said before on this page, 1 10 is equal to 10 ones. So I'm going to take this 10 and I'm going to change it into ones. Now, I've gotten rid of that and I've changed it into ones. Let's take a look at the total number of ones that we have. We had 8, and then we added 10 more, so we have a total of 18 ones. Now we're going to take those 18 ones and we're going to evenly distribute them into each of our groups. So as I distribute them, I'm going to cross them out. And what we're doing right now is dividing. We're taking our 18 ones and we're dividing them into our equal groups. And we ended up being perfect. We didn't have anything left over. We were able to take all of our ones and divide them out equally. So, in order for us to figure out what our quotient is, what our answer is, we would have to add all of these pieces up. So I have 1 10, and then I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 ones. So in each of these groups, I have 16. 16 is my quotient for the answer to the division problem. Now, how does that translate to long division? We're going to start working. Well, it works out like this. We're going to take our 4, and we're going to look at our 4, which is in the tens place. And that 4 represents 40. That's the value of that 4. And we have to think to ourselves, how many 3's can we separate that 4 into? How many 3's can we pull out? So we have to think 3 times something is going to give me close to 4 but not over. Or we can think about division. 4 divided by 3 is what? Now we see over here in all of these models, and with what we did with our base 10 blocks, we were able to take 1 10 and distribute it to each section. So how many 10s are there in each section? There's 1 10 in each section. Now, that tells me how many are in each group. What I'm about to do is show us how many I've used in total. So I used 1, 2, 3 of my base 10 blocks. So 3 times 1 is 3. When I distributed those base 10 blocks, I had 1 left over, which is what I'm going to show us right now. I have 1 10 left over. Now, we regrouped that 10 and turned it into ones. And when we regrouped, we ended up having 18 ones left. Then, we divided that 18. So that's our next step. We look at this 18, and we look at our divisor of 3, and we're going to divide. 18 divided by 3 is 6, which is what we found with all of our ones in our groups. So we get a quotient of 16 here, and we got our quotient of 16 here. All of this stuff is what it looks like with base 10 blocks. All of this over here is what it looks like when we're just doing long division. But it's the same process. We're taking these numbers and we're bringing them apart into equal groups. Okay, let's take a look at another one. This one a little quicker. Here we have 72. I represented it with 7 tens and 2 ones. My divisor is 5. It's telling me how many groups I need to split 72 into. I'm going to split it into 5 groups. So I'm going to take my tens and I'm going to split them into 5 groups. Now, when I do that, I have 2 tens that I have not used. In order for me to use those 2 tens, I'm going to need to change them and regroup them into ones, because I can't take these 2 tens and split them up anymore into my groups. So I'm going to regroup those 2 tens. And when I regroup 2 tens is the same as 20 ones. So that's what I showed you over here. I crossed out 2 tens, regroup them, and turn them into ones. Now, I can divide 22 into 5, because now I have 2 ones over here. I have 2 that are green that came from my ones place, and then I have my regrouping 20 over here. So now I'm going to divide those 22 ones, 22 divided into 5 groups. And when I divide them, you'll notice that we have 2 left over. I can't use these 2 because I can't divide it evenly into my groups. When I look at my group as a whole, and I look at each of these groups, and I say, how many do I have in each group? That's going to be my quotient. I have 14 in each group. And I have 2 left over, and that's going to be my remainder. Now, let's take a look at our problem, and let's see if we can. Okay, I have to do my tens first, and I'm going to underline that. And I divided 7 divided by 5. So does 5 go into 7 one time? The answer is yes, because 7 is greater than 5. So I can at least pull out one 5. 7 divided by 5, I can get 1. Okay, and you'll notice that we have 1 10 in each of our groups. Okay, now, how many 10s did I use altogether? I used 5 of them. And I got 5 by multiplying 5 times 1. 5 times 1 is 5, and now I'm going to subtract. When I subtract, I have to think, how many 10s do I have left over? 7 minus 5 is 2. I have 2 10s left over. Now, just like we did over here with our base 10 blocks, we're going to regroup that 2 10s into 1s, and we bring down our other number. When we regroup, we get 22 1s. Now, we're going to divide again. We're going to look at our 22 1s, and we're going to divide that by 5. 22 divided by 5. Well, I know that 20 times 5 times 4 gets me 20. So 22 divided by 5 is going to get me 4. Now I have to figure out how many of those 1s am I using, so I'm going to multiply. 5 times 4, and I get 20. I'm going to subtract, and I'm left with 2. Now I don't have anything else to bring down, and my 2 right here on the bottom is less than my divisor of 5, so I know that this is my remainder. And if we look at our answer, 14 remainder 2, it's the same as our answer over here. All right, let's take a look at one that has a little bit bigger of a number. We're going to take a look at 6. How many times does 6 go into 152, or 152 divided by 6? Now, we're going to model that with base 10 blocks as well. Okay, we have 100 square, and we have 5 10 longs and 2 1 cubes. So let's take a look. All right, we want to split this into 6 groups, because that's what our divisor is saying. It wants equal groups of 6. If I look at my hundreds block right here, I only have 1 of them. I can't break one of these blocks and separate it into 6 pieces. I just can't. I can't physically do that. So I'm going to have to regroup this 100 block into 10s. Now, think about it for a minute. How many 10s are there in 100? If you have a 100 block, how many 10s can you pull out? You can pull out 10 of them. So let's regroup this hundreds block into 10s. Okay, I've regrouped my hundreds block into 10s. Now I have a total of 15 10s. I couldn't go into 1, so I had to regroup into 15 10s. So I'm looking at 15 10s, and I have to separate that into 6 equal groups. So let's do that now. Now when I separate into 6 equal groups, I end up having 3 left over. These 3 right here. Those are my leftovers. Now, let's take a look at our problem and do it at the same time. So what we just did is we took our 15 10s right here, and we broke those into groups of 6. So we divided 15 divided by 6. And we ended up having 2 in each group. And notice how this is going over our 10s place? Because I'm dividing into my 10s place. Okay, I need to know how many I just used. In order for me to figure out how many I used, I can count them all up. Or I can just multiply. I have 6 groups and 2 in each group, so I have used 12 10s. Now I need to subtract. And when I subtract, I'm left with 3, which is what I'm left with over here. Now I need to regroup. I need to regroup those 3 10s into 1s. So I'm going to bring this 2 down, and it's going to show me that I'm going to have 32 1s. I'm going to regroup these 10s into 1s. 3 10s is the same as 31, so I just put 31s on our board. Now, we need to divide. We need to take 32 and divide it by 6, because we're putting 6 equal groups. Okay, when I do that, I have 5 of those 1s that are going to go in each group, and then you'll notice over here I have 2 that are left over. So when I divide 32 divided by my divisor of 6, how many times does 6 go into 32? It goes in 5 times. Now I need to figure out how many I just separated. So I'm going to multiply my divisor of 6 times what I just put up in my quotient of 5. 6 times 5 is 30. I subtract, and I'm left with 2. So that is my remainder. If I look in my picture, I can see the same thing using my base 10 blocks. I have 2 10s and 5 1s. So each of these has 25 in them. And I had my 2 over here that were left over. Okay. Now let's take a look at the steps that we need to follow to solve these problems without drawing our pictures every single time. We have 4 steps that we need to follow. Our first step is we have to divide. Our second step is to multiply. Our third step is to subtract. And our fourth step is to bring down. Now, when we're dividing and when we're multiplying and subtracting and bringing down, we're going to do this place value by place value. And we always start with our greatest place value. So let's take a look at the sample problem that we have right here. Alright, we're going to start by underlining our greatest place value, which is in the tens place, and it's a 5. That's worth 50. I want to say, how many 4s are there in 5? So 5 divided by 4, or I can think 4 times what is going to get me close to 5 but not over. 4 times 1 gets me close to 5 but not over. So I just divided. I divided 5 divided by 4 and I got 1. That was my first step. That's step number 1. Step number 2 is to multiply. When I multiply, I'm going to multiply my divisor times the number I just put on top. The number I just put on top. So 4 times 1 is 4. Now I subtract. And I get 1. That means I have 1 10 left over. My next step is to bring down my next place value. Now I have to divide again. And what I'm dividing into is this number down here. And I'm dividing my 16 divided by my divisor. My divisor is used in almost every single piece of this. Okay? So now I have to think, what is 16 divided by 4? Or 4 times what gets me close to 16 without going over? 4 times 4 gets me there. Now, I brought down my number and now I just divide it again. So now I need to again follow my next step, which is to multiply. And when I multiply, I'm going to multiply times the number that I just put on top, which is that 4. 4 times 4 is 16. My third step is to subtract, and when I do that, I'm left with 0. I look at my fourth step, that's bring down. I don't have anything else to bring down. I look at what I have down here after I subtracted. It's a 0. That's a good sign. What I have left needs to be less than my divisor. So my quotient is 14. 4 steps that we have to follow, and then we repeat them. Some people say, remember this by saying, okay, dad, mom, sister, brother. Dad, mom, sister, brother. That's the process that they have to follow. Dad for divide, mom for multiply, sister for subtract, and brother for bring down. Alright, let's take a look at another problem and solve it using long division. And we have to remember where we're putting our first place value in our quotient. I'm going to start with the greatest place value. In this case, it's my hundreds place, and it's a 7. And I'm going to have to divide. I have to think in my head, how many times does 6 go into 7? What is 7 divided by 6? Or I can think 6 times what gets me close to 7 but not over. My first step is to divide. Okay? When I do that, I get 1. My second step is to multiply. So I'm going to multiply my divisor times the number I just put on top. 6 times 1 is 6. This tells me I am going to use 6 of my hundreds. If I drew a picture and I had 7 total hundreds, I would have separated out 6 of them. When I subtract, this tells me I have 100 left. Can't take that 1/100 though and split it into 6 parts. Instead, I have to regroup, which is what step number 3 is helping me do. Or step number 3 was to subtract. So which is what step number 4 was helping me do, which is to bring down. I'm going to bring my next place value down. I've just regrouped 100 and now I have 15 tens. Now I have to start the process all over again. My first step is to divide. I'm going to look at what I have left down here, and that is what I'm going to focus on dividing. How many times does my divisor of 6 go into 15? 15 divided by 6. 15 divided by 6 will give me 2. Now I need to figure out, okay, how many of those 15 have I used? Do I have anything left over? In order for me to do that, I'm going to multiply. That's step number 2. I'm going to multiply my divisor times the number I just put on top. 6 times 2. That's 12. Step number 3 is to subtract. I have to figure out how many I have left. 15 minus 12 is 3. My fourth step is to bring down. I have 3 tens left over right now. I can't separate those 3 tens into 6 groups, so I have to bring my 6 down, and this helps me regroup my 3 tens into 36 ones. Now I have to start all over again. I have to go back up here, and I have to work on dividing again. And I'm focusing on this number right here in my divisor. Notice how we keep the divisor. Alrighty, 36 divided by 6. Or I can think 6 times what gets me close to 36 without going over. 6 times 6 gets me 36. So I just divided. I divided 36 divided by 6, and I got a quotient of 6. That goes on top. So that was my division. Now I need to multiply. I'm going to focus on my divisor again, and I'm going to multiply 6 times the number that I just put on top, which is another 6. 6 times 6 is 36. We go to step number 3, that's subtract. I'm left with 0. I don't have anything else to bring down. What I have left is less than my divisor, so I have a quotient of 126. 4 steps along division. Let's take a look at a few more problems. One more. Okay, now, with this problem, again, we're starting in our greatest place value, so I'm going to underline that. That's a 4. That represents 4 hundredths. So if you think in your head about hundreds blocks, you have 4 of them. Do you have enough to put at least one of those in each of 7 groups if you only have 4? No, you don't have enough. So in order for us to continue dividing, we're going to have to regroup that 4 hundredths, and now we're going to look at 42 tens. Because we can't divide 4 divided by 7, but we can divide 42 divided by 7, so that's going to be our new focus. Now notice we're talking about 42 tens, so my answer is going to start in my tens place, because I'm talking about tens. Now, my first step is to divide, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take 42 divided by 7. 42 divided by 7 is 6. Step number 2 is to multiply. 7, my divisor, times 6, the number I just put on top. 7 times 6 is 42. Step number 3 is to subtract. 42 minus 42 gives me 0. Step number 4 is to bring down. I'm going to bring my 7 down. Now, I have to repeat and go back up to division again. I am focusing on this 7 right here, or whatever I had left down after I subtracted and I brought down. I have to divide. 7 divided by my divisor of 7. 7 divided by 7 is 1. That was my division. Now I need to multiply. I'm going to multiply my divisor times the number I just put up top. 7 times 1 is 7. Now I need to subtract. I'm left with 0. I don't have anything else to bring down. What I have left is less than my divisor, so 61 is my quotient, or my answer to this division problem. Okay, last one we're going to look at. Now, just like last problem, we have to start in the greatest place value. That's our hundreds place, and there's an 8 there. Our divisor is 9, though. We can't divide 8 divided by 9. We're going to get a number less than 1, and we don't want that. So, in order for us to divide, we're going to have to regroup 8 hundreds into tens. And we're going to extend our line out to cover our tens. Now we're looking at 83 tens, and we need to divide. That's step number 1. How many times does 9 go into 83? Or 83 divided by 9. 9 goes into 83 9 times. Step number 2 is to multiply. 9, my divisor, times 9, the number I just put on top. 9 times 9 is 81. Step number 3 is to subtract. 83 minus 81 is going to tell me how many I have left. I have 2. Notice how this 9 that is up top right here is in the tens place. Not in the hundreds place, but in the tens place, because I had to regroup, and I had to focus on 83 tens. Okay, let's get back down over here. So when I subtracted, I was left with 2. Step number 4 is to bring down. I'm going to take my 1 and I'm going to bring it down. Now, I have to go back up and I have to divide again. I'm focusing on my 21 to divide. 21 divided by 9. 21 divided by 9, I get 2. Step number 2 is to multiply. My divisor of 9 times the number that I just put up top. 9 times 2 is 18. I subtract, and I'm left with 3. Now, I don't have anything left to bring down. What I do have left is less than my divisor of 9. So this becomes my remainder. And I bring it all the way up to the top, and I write a remainder of 3. So this is my answer. 92, remainder 3. Okay, that's what I want you to remember about this. We have 4 steps to follow. Divide, multiply, subtract, bring down. I guess we have 5 because then we repeat. Remember, always start with the greatest place value. If you can divide into that place value, then your quotient is starting in that place value. So, with this problem, we could divide into our tens place, and our quotient started in our tens place. However, in this problem right here, we could not divide into our hundreds place. So our answer did not start in our hundreds place. Instead, we divided into our tens place because we regrouped, and so our answer started in our tens. Remember, we're always going to be focusing with our divisor right here. Whatever our divisor is, that's what we're going to be dividing into, and that's what we are going to be multiplying against. And we're going to multiply times our number on top. Use those steps, subtract all the way down, follow the steps over and over and over again, and you'll do awesome. That is multiplying, or dividing, modeling division with regrouping, and focusing on placing the first digit of the quotient.